Breakdown for week five's VGC round robin. As always, I'm just going to quickly go over the team and then hop straight into the matches. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with this team this week because I feel like it's pretty important to understand what the goal of this team is in order to figure out how to beat it. I don't think it's like a super amazing team or anything, but I think that there's a lot of things here that are quite good into the current meta, so I'll touch on that. But the basis of the team is that it is built around Registeel, but you can see there's a myriad of speed control options that we have between Tailwind, Trick Room, Icy Wind, or it still functions without any speed control because Registeel and Cresselia are very bulky, so they don't mind going second. And Rillaboom, Landorus, Ogerpon are kind of in like the middling speed tier where, well, Ogerpon and Landorus are actually quite fast, but they can outpace most teams outside of Trick Room, and then the faster stuff like Fluttermane and Shenpao. We have our own answers into that. So, yeah, it's a little bit weird because it's got Tailwind, Trick Room, and Rain on it, but it all kind of works together to support the main focus of the team, which is Registeel. So yeah, I'll just hop right into it. This is a pretty standard Registeel set. I know some people invest more into attack for a better heavy slam. I think most notably you can invest I think it's 92 attack EVs, and then your heavy slam is like pretty guaranteed on most flutters, but I didn't really feel like I needed a better flutter matchup, so I just kind of went full in on the bulk. Leftovers pretty good for Registeel because obviously it's very bulky, but if you combine the leftovers along with Rillaboom's grassy terrain healing and potential lunar blessings from Cresselia, this thing definitely sticks on the field for a very long time. So yeah, I mean, it's actually very good into a surprising amount of things, I would say. Especially if you get an Iron Defense off, like it just kind of shrugs off a lot of attacks like Ivy Cudgel, Shadow Ball, Stomping Tantrum on like non-ground types like Rillaboom not Rillaboom, but a lot of Pokemon often run Stomping Tantrum as like a coverage move, like you see it sometimes on Ogerpon. And it kind of just ignores that just because of how high the defense is, especially with Iron Defense. And then the healing just kind of completely negates all of that. So, yeah, I mean, this thing it's bulky enough to the point where you can tank stuff like Urshifu Close Combat, Flare Blitz, especially under the rain. Basically, you just ignore it, even if you don't need to commit a Terra. Specs, Fluttermane, Shadow Ball does like 35 to 40% if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's very hard to remove, and it actually does pretty meaningful damage. Like +2 body press is hitting. You can Oko Urshifu single strike, assuming no focus sash, but you do like 56 to 70, or like 56 to 66-ish% to Incineroar at +2. You're usually hitting like Ogerpon and Raging Bolt, which are usually pretty bulky. If you get +2, it's probably about 50 to 60%. So it definitely does very meaningful damage. And there's a lot of tools on this team that allow it to get space to get the Iron Defense up. So everything else is very standard. Terra Water to get rid of the fire specifically because the fire weakness is more important than, let's say, a fighting weakness because we're already using Iron Defense, so we can usually shrug off most ground and fighting moves, which because those are normally physical. So we don't really need something like a Terra Fairy to resist fighting or anything like that. And I have tried the Terra Fire, which was pretty solid because you keep your fairy resistance and grass resistance, but I felt like Terra Water was better for this team in particular since I didn't want to take rain boosted water moves as a Terra Fire Registeel. So that was the reasoning behind that. So next up we've got Cresselia. Cresselia Registeel is a duo that I got the idea from one of Neil VGC's videos. But the idea is that one of the biggest ways to shut down Registeel is Will-O-Wisp, actually. I know a lot of Incineroar are starting to pick up Will-O-Wisp onto their move slots, so having that Will-O-Wisp on Incineroar means that you beat Registeel, which is normally a Pokemon that you kind of struggle with due to the clear body and the body press cutting through that. So just having something to cleanse status plus heal on what is already a very bulky Pokemon is really nice. Registeel also appreciates Trick Room, and we can sort of use Trick Room to deter Tailwind teams if we need to. But in general, I think this team has a decent matchup against Tailwind for the most part. Icy Wind was the flex slot. I considered running Protect because I think there is a very real situation where Cresselia goes down before getting Trick Room up. But I ended up just going with the Icy Wind just to get some more utility down. Because as you can see, Moonblast off of a non-stab unless I Terra isn't going to do the most damage. It's just good into Urshifu Single Strike, which is pretty common and one of Cresselia's biggest problems if you don't have a Terra. But yeah, the Lunar Blessing and Trick Room is the main reason I picked Cresselia. Lunar Blessing is really nice for Registeel in particular, but it also helps some of my other Pokemon, especially considering that it hits through Protect, so I could do like Spiky Shield on Ogerpon and heal some HP back up. So it's like a pretty safe heal for most of the time, which is really nice to have. And I know a lot of Cresselia are going like Goggles or Rocky Helmet even. I ended up going with Mental Herb just because I felt like getting taunted onto this Cresselia in particular would be pretty bad for me. Like, if I bring Cresselia plus Registeel or Cresselia plus something else, I have to get a lot of value out of the Trick Room and Lunar Blessing. So getting taunted would be a big problem for that. So that's why I ended up going for Mental Herb. And it's still a good item, so it's not like terrible on it or anything like that. Rillaboom, very standard set. The EV spreads are a little bit odd, I think, but there's just a little bit of everything for the most part. The only thing I do want to touch on is the high horsepower over U-turn. High horsepower over U-turn was because we have a decent issue against fire types. Since Registeel doesn't want to take on fire types unless it Terra Waters, and even then it can't really hit them that effectively. Cresselia doesn't do anything to fire types. So if I had Rillaboom, Registeel, Cresselia, then I've already got 3 Pokemon that don't want to go up against the fire type. So the high horsepower is just like a good solid coverage move for it. It hits a lot of things in the meta right now, and it's pretty solid damage overall considering we're running Adamant plus a good amount of attack investment. So that was the reasoning behind that. Fake Out, Grassy Glide, Woodhammer, very common. Assault Vest, very common. Terra Fire, I tend to prefer over Terra Water because, again, we had the fire weakness, and I still wanted to keep a fairy resist around outside of Registeel. So next up, we got Landorus Incarnate. Landorus Incarnate is mostly on the team as coverage, basically. It allows me to hit a lot of key Pokemon and types that my team really needs to deal with. Specifically, fire and grass types are the ones that I put the Landorus on the team to deal with. It's a pretty standard set, except most people in the fourth slot either run Sandsear Storm or Substitute, but I initially had Substitute, but as soon as I added Pelipper, I was like, Sandsear Storm is definitely the way to go, since we can just make it accurate whenever we want, basically. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty standard to slap this on. I think Landorus Eye is actually, like, in the beginning of the regulation, it was popular, and it kind of dropped off a little bit, and now it's rising back up. I think it's really strong right now, considering Ogerpon Wellspring is everywhere, and it has a pretty good matchup into that. Forces it to burn Terra. I think Rillaboom will probably be popping up a little bit more as an answer to Ogerpon Wellspring, and Landorus does pretty well into that. So, I mean, there's so many other Pokemon that this mod does so well into, so it just makes so much sense on this team. And in general, I think a lot of people should be looking towards Landorus, especially considering Raging Bolt is popping back up even more again, so having that electric switch in is really nice. So next we've got Ogerpon Wellspring. This is kind of a Pokemon that you can just slap on the team for the most part. It's just so flexible, so strong. It's very rare that Ogerpon Wellspring is the wrong choice on a team. You can build it bulky, you can build it fast, you can build it offensive. It can do lots of damage, it can just redirect things and be a nuisance. It's just got so much utility, so flexible. So I think in particular on this team, I wanted to bring it along for the Follow Me to buy some space for my mons, so it made sense to run Ogerpon over, let's say, like a Moongus, because I already had a grass type in Rillaboom, and Ogerpon Wellspring gets boosted up by Pelipper. So even though I brought it along mostly as a supporter Pokemon, Terra Water, Rain boosted Ivy Cudgels are going to like seriously chunk most Pokemon. So not only that, but we do have Rillaboom being able to boost Woodhammer's damage, so we've kind of got, like, Ogerpon can really hit really hard on this team with the right support. And both of those are like switch-ins, so it can just suddenly output a lot of damage into positions where you think, like, oh, he's just going to follow me to buy space for, like, Registeel or something like that. But yeah, this is a pretty common EV set that I run, but I don't know if that many people are running. It's basically, I know that some people have picked up on it, which is the 188 plus Jolly to outspeed Landorus, which is one of its bigger issues. But it does sacrifice quite a lot of bulk, but I really do like the extra speed on Ogerpon sometimes. So usually my Ogerpon isn't really sitting on the field for that long. I just need it to mitigate a couple key turns or pick up some key KOs, so I'm fine with going less bulk on it personally. And the last Pokemon, we've got Pelipper. It seems like a weird addition to the team, considering we don't have like an Archaludon or something like that for a hard rain mon that we usually see paired with Pelipper, but it actually makes a lot of sense on this team. It covers fire damage from Rillaboom and Registeel. It lets Landorus hit Sandsear Storm a lot more accurately. It boosts Ogerpon damage-wise, and it gives us access to Tailwind and Wide Guard. I think Wide Guard is a really neat move in this meta, considering Flutter Mane is so popular, but it also deals pretty well with stuff like Chi-Yu or Snarl users, Icy Wind. There's just a lot of utility with Wide Guard right now. Other than that, everything else is pretty standard. Hurricane, Weather Ball are pretty standard coverage moves. And it's EV to outspeed Scarf Urshifu under Tailwind by 1 point, and then the rest is in bulk and offense. So pretty standard. Went Terra Grass to. I know Terra Ground is sometimes used to ignore the electric types, but I decided to just go with Terra Grass, and so I can resist it and also be able to ignore Rage Powder or anything else like that Spore. But, you don't really end up tearing Terra Grass on Pelipper that much. I would say the main targets are mainly Registeel, Rillaboom. Well, honestly, all 5 of these are very viable to Terra other than Pelipper. But so yeah, that was the mindset behind the team. I do need to do a lot more testing with it. This is actually the first time I ended up using it, so there's probably some big holes, but for now, I think it's pretty solid. It's definitely a lot slower than I'm used to, but we'll see how I adapt it as I go. So first up, there were only me, Anthony, and Aster, so there's not as many matches to go over. But the matches go on for a while because of my team being a lot more defensive. So, excuse me. For this first matchup, I was actually looking at the wrong notes. Like, I did some prep for these matches, and I was looking at. I always write down who I want to bring and who should be my lead and everything, and some situations that play out in my head. And I was looking at the wrong notes, so I ended up bringing Pelipper Cresselia, which is my game plan against Anthony, which you'll see later. But then game 2, I switched it to what it should be. And basically, the main idea here is that Registeel actually destroys a lot of her team. Mainly, like, it's really not scared of most of the mons on her team. Like, the biggest threats are Chien-Pao and Raging Bolt. Chien-Pao can hit with Sacred Sword, but we can kind of shrug that off after 1 to 2 Iron Defenses, plus our healing with Rillaboom, Cresselia, and Leftovers. And Raging Bolt is kind of like an even matchup because it hits special, which Iron Defense doesn't raise special defense, obviously. So it probably hits for around 30 to 40%, and in return, Registeel hits back about the same amount with Body Press, depending on how many Iron Defenses I have up. But it's particularly bad for me if I commit to a Water Terra. So, those are the main 2 things that I need to clear in order for Registeel to deal with the rest of the team, because the rest of it I'm not really that worried about. Sylveon, I guess, could do some damage, but I can usually get away with 2-hit KOing it or getting close to that with Heavy Slam or Body Press, depending on if it tears. So, Raging Bolt Meowstic comes out. Meowstic is pretty interesting. I didn't know it had Prankster, but yeah, this is the first time I've seen Meowstic. I played a little bit against Aster when we were testing our team, and she wanted to test the Meowstic, so I had some experience against it. So yeah, let's see. The moveset is Trick Room, Reflect, Protect, Alluring Voice with Covert Cloak. I think for this set in particular, and something you'll see me do often, which is, I think Meowstic is not directly disrupting any of the plays I have. So what I like to do against this thing, especially given my team, is that I don't mind if Trick Room comes up. I've got Cresselia, Registeel, and Pelipper's pretty slow. It's totally fine with me if Trick Room comes up. Reflect is the biggest disturbance to my team, but I think here I'm very confident in playing slow. Like, I think the Cresselia, Registeel, Rillaboom core that I have is much better at playing slow into her team. So I really just felt confident that if we had to, we could just play it slow and win off of that. So I mainly just kind of ignore the Meowstic because once it gets Reflect up and maybe it decides to Trick Room or not, I don't really have a reason to ever target it down. Like, it's not doing any damage to me, so I can just kind of leave it on the field and then it turns into a 1v2. And yeah, as I said, the lead is not what I wanted. I didn't really want to bring Pelipper in at first. So it's a little awkward here because Pelipper will die immediately to Raging Bolt. I could get a Tailwind up, but Meowstic could trigger him, so that kind of negates it. And Cresselia can't really do that much damage considering this is AV Raging Bolt. So I just try to get a little bit of chip damage in with the Moonblast and get a switch in. And yeah, I don't have this uploaded to YouTube yet, which is why I'm just playing it off the raw footage. So yeah, the display looks a little bit weird, but basically I swap in Landers. Landers is the Pokemon that I'm like, I have to bring this in order to beat the Raging Bolt. Actually, very good Snarl on their part, and I'm actually very lucky that it missed the Landers, because that means that I now threaten the Raging Bolt pretty hard here. I can't KO it, but that Snarl drop probably would have put me into a 3-hit KO scenario instead of a 2-hit KO. And as I said before, like, I need to get this Raging Bolt off the field. So yeah, the Snarl hitting Cresselia means that Moonblast is no longer really doing anything. So I decide, like, well, they put up Trick Room, so it's really bad for me to use Icy Wind. I may as well just Lunar Blessing, heal any damage that comes onto Landorus, and basically stall some turns off of this Trick Room. I could have swapped into Registeel probably, but I'm kind of fine going up with this Landorus versus Raging Bolt scenario where Cresselia and Meowstic are just kind of sitting on the field supporting. Thunderbolt goes into Cresselia, and we get a good chunk of damage down. So yeah, that Snarl miss actually did kind of matter, but it looks like they weren't targeting into the Landers anyway. So I think the scenario there is you probably want to either Dragon Pulse the Landers or get a Snarl off. I guess it could have gone either way because I could have protected as well. So no, I still think you do it, because if you force Landers to protect, that's something that I think some players get caught up in, is like, what if they protect and I hit into the protect? You kind of have to, like, sometimes it's actually good to force the Pokemon to protect. Like, let's say that I protected with my Landorus and you just decided to Dragon Pulse there. That's a turn where Raging Bolt's not getting hit, basically. So you could have gone for, like, let's say Dragon Pulse into Landorus, and then you're like, well, if he doesn't protect, he's taking like half his HP. And if he does protect, then I get a free switch from Meowstic into something else. So something to keep in mind, like, sometimes forcing your opponents to click protect and then just covering for it is still a really good option. So instead they end up going into Incineroar here, which I think I overthought it. My thought process is that I may as well Sludge Bomb in case, like, Sylveon comes in. But I really just had a free Sandseer Storm here, I think. I could have just kept clicking it. Or even Earth Power would have been fine. So yeah, Trick Room goes back to normal. And this is kind of the issue, I think, with Meowstic, which is, as I said, like, it just does not put any pressure on the field. Like, it's kind of more of a passive support. Like, it gets Reflect Up or it gets Trick Room, and then it kind of just sits there. So I'm very okay with just ignoring whatever it's doing, and then yeah, just going from there. I have a good switch into Registeel here because the rain is up. So if he flare or if Aster Flare Blitz me, then whatever. I take like 25%, I think, and that's easily healable with Cresselia. So Cresselia is actually 85 base speed, so it's actually naturally faster than Incineroar. So outside of Trick Room, I'm fine just clicking Lunar Blessings. Get a little bit of chip down. Knockoff does about 40%. The Mental Alert wasn't doing anything, so I'm totally fine eating a knockoff there. And right now I have extremely free iron defenses. Like, Meowstic can't do anything. Incineroar, the most it could do, actually knock off into my leftovers would probably be more... end up being more beneficial than clicking Flare Blitz since they're under the rain. So right here I'm like, there's no reason why I shouldn't just set up Iron Defense, right? Like, it beats Chien-Pao later, so I may as well just keep it going. There's 2 more turns to Reflect. Like, I don't have to rush anything. I can just set up a nice defense boost for myself and go for Lunar Blessing to heal any chip on the Registeel and to heal my Cresselia. So I think if you're Aster here, it's hard to say because Incineroar is actually really good into Rillaboom, but the Pelipper Rain is really annoying for Incineroar. Actually, Fake Out Pressure is still good, so maybe you do something like Incineroar plus Chien-Pao or Incineroar plus Sylveon or Raging Bolt so that you can fake out a slot and get damage going. But yeah, as it is right now, Registeel's kind of free to do whatever. And I do think at some point you should consider switching your Meowstic out. Because like I said, it's not actively doing anything on the field. So once it gets its support moves up, you really have to move it off the field in order to get some more impactful mons, I think. It's kind of like what some people call "all my friends are dead" syndrome, which is, it's really common for very bulky Pokemon that don't have much offense, stuff like Registeel or like Toxapex or something. Like, you don't see those types of Pokemon being used too often because in VGC it's very easy for you to just ignore that slot and just target down the teammates. And then suddenly, as it is, all your friends are dead and you're in like a 1v3, 1v2 situation. So that's why I think like having some sort of active pressure on the field is very important. And why Pokemon like well, Whimsicott is a little bit different. I think Whimsicott actually has a lot of ways to disrupt thanks to Encore, but pure support Pokemon can get stuck in scenarios where they aren't really doing anything. But yeah, that right there, unfortunately, Knowledge Check, you can't Parting Shot into the Registeel and it will actually just block it completely. And the reason I decided not to go for another Iron Defense there is because Iron Defense does not do anything against Raging Bolt. It lets me do more damage to it, but I kind of just wanted to get more damage into the team in case the Raging Bolt came in, because that's my main concern right now. And right now, Yeah, it looks like I'm just covering for anything that's coming there because Incineroar doesn't have Protect, so I'm very free to double it. And as I said, I'm kind of game plan is just ignore the Meowstic right now. But this is a little unfortunate here because I think I actually end up crit KOing the Meowstic, or it just KOs. No, it is a crit. So I did not want to crit there because, as I said, I wanted to leave Meowstic on the field as long as possible. And I don't think without the crit that kills. This is +2 body press, but it's resisted and it reflect is up. So I didn't actually want to KO there. And now this puts me in a little bit of a bad spot because I don't have speed control up. I don't have any way of protecting my Registeel other than it using Protect. And now I'm going up against the Raging Bolt plus something else. Chenpao, yeah. So this is like the scenario I wanted to avoid, which is there are 2 Pokemon in the field that can deal damage to Registeel in a spot where normally it wouldn't take any damage. So, and right here, the thought process here is that my Pelipper still has the Focus Sash intact, so Aster would need to double up into the Pelipper in order to knock it out. So I actually have a pretty free either Tailwind or Attack here. I didn't think Tailwind would help since Chanpao is already faster and Raging Bolt has Thunderclap. So the thought process here is that I can sort of cover. If they double up into Pelipper, Registeel still gets an attack off. If they double up into Registeel, then I still get an attack off with Pelipper. So I wanted to break the Sash on the Chanpao, which is the main goal. And this actually gets pretty dicey here in the end game, if I remember correctly. And I think normally I'm in a good position, but the one problem that comes in is the Sacred Sword crit that I think happens either this turn or next turn. Let's see. Terra Ghost comes out. Yeah, it kind of makes sense because, like, if I click Body Press into it, it would have completely negated that, right? And you don't want to Terra Grass your Raging Bolt in front of Pelipper. So this right here, that critical hit actually almost turns the game into her favor. The crit doesn't matter there because Focus Sash. Because my Registeel actually dies from this, I believe. In a scenario where, like, obviously I said these are the 2 most threatening Pokemon, but losing my bulkiest Pokemon in one round is really bad for me, especially considering my back 2 are Pokemon that either don't have enough. Well, Cresselia is the best choice here because both of them are low, so I don't have to deal that much damage. But Landorus obviously loses immediately to Chanpao, so. The good news here is I can just kind of chip it as easily as it comes. The Icy Wind is kind of a. I guess my thought process was that I can. Oh, that was weird. I don't. The Icy Wind's actually fine, but I really should have attacked into Raging Bolt with Pelipper. Because the Icy Wind ensures that if Chanpao doesn't go for Protect, then I knock it out with Cresselia. But if it does Protect, then Pelipper should get an attack off into Raging Bolt. So, a bit of a missed target there, and I get Thunderclap for my troubles. And this is why it gets dicey, because crit plus misplay here means that I now have... like, obviously Raging Bolt and Chanpao are literally one-shot, but there's a scenario where I lose both of my Pokemon, and then the last one is Landorus, which, as I said, dies to Chanpao. So this is the scenario I did want to avoid, but you know, it happens. And I don't really need to... I guess I could have Terra Fairied my Cresselia here to cover for Sucker Punch. But I wanted to potentially save it for a Terra Poison on my Landers to see if I could dodge Ice. Well, you know what? That doesn't even make sense because Raging Bolt is always clicking Dragon Pulse into it, and Shenpao should just click a move into it, and it doesn't matter which move, it'll just KO it. Like a 2-hit KO. So this was really dumb by me. Like, I had a very free Terra Fairy into Cresselia here, so basically 2 misplays and a crit means that this game comes down to a lot closer than I thought, or a lot closer than I feel like it could have been. But yeah, I mean, it's good on them to stick with the Raging Bolt Chanpao in the end game. I think that was the best play that you could have made. Obviously, I think there was a couple factors there earlier in the game that they could have done a little bit better, like the knowledge of the parting shot into the clear body. But in general, I'm trying to think, like, if I'm using Aster's team and I'm going up against my team, I think my goal is I have to force the Registeel to I need to force it to Terra or get a taunt into it with Zoroark. So, because if the Iron Defenses come up, then there's not really much that the team can do outside of Raging Bolt. So if I can force it to Terra, then Raging Bolt gets a lot of damage off with Thunderclap plus Thunderbolt. Or if I can taunt it, then it can't set up any Iron Defenses, and then the impact is a lot lower than it would normally be. And it's actually like doable to take down with Sacred Sword. So this game I ended up going with my original plan, which was lead with Rillaboom Registeel. Rillaboom is pretty good at dealing with the Chanpao or Raging Bolt because it tanks Raging Bolt pretty well, and getting a fake out into either of them is very good. Or I force the Chanpao to burn the Terra. I think the turn 1, I still need to scout for Zoro because I don't want to get taunted. As I said, the taunting would be really bad. Taunt basically forces me to switch out because I don't want to sit Registeel on the field with no boosts. So yeah, this is really good lead by them, I think. This is the most offensive pressure that you can put down. And I think I actually end up switching my Registeel out here. So, so here I do have a fake out option, but I don't want to fake out into a Zoro on accident, and I don't want to fake out into a Protect or a Terra Ghost from Chanpao. So instead, my thought process is like, well, actually, I can just Terra Fire and immediately get damage into Raging Bolt, which is one of the threats that I need to remove from the game. So I think that's actually the choice I end up going for, but it takes me a while to deliberate this one. And the Terra Fire Rillaboom ends up being very good this game. So yeah, Terra Fire, high horsepower, then switch into Ogerpon or Protect. I can't remember. Yeah, so it ends up being Ogerpon. And they end up switching out, which I think is a good option because your Incineroar is going to take some damage, but you save the Raging Bolt's HP, which is one of the biggest threats to my team, and you get an Intimidate out onto Rillaboom. So good play from them. So yeah, I have to commit a Terra here because I don't want to immediately die to Genpao. And the Terrifier just makes it so that Genpao needs to hit me probably 3 times, I think, to KO me. So yeah, the Protect comes out. So I get around that. Incineroar only takes half because of the Intimidate, but it's still meaningful damage. So right here, I have a Grassy Glide into the Genpao for to break the Sash. And right here, I could double up into Genpao, actually. I think that would actually be pretty good. Yeah, so I end up doing that. I think she ends up fake outing. Obviously, one of my Pokemon is going to get hit by fake out this turn. And in this scenario, I don't really mind getting hit by fake out. So that's why I'm clicking double attack, because Genpad just protected, so it has no way of doing it again other than getting lucky. So yeah, I really just need to break the Sash on it. As you can see, I'm really trying to get the Chanpao and Raging Bolt off of the basically get them out of the game so that Registeel can do what it wants to. But they're doing a good job of making it pretty difficult for me. I do think that with the Terrifier, Incineroar kind of becomes a lot more scared now because Rillaboom is still threatening good damage with high horsepower, and it's suddenly scared of Ogerpon and Rillaboom, and it can't really hit back into either of them. So the Intimidate's really nice to have on both of these Pokemon, but yeah, I mean, that right there is like why Ogerpon is so good sometimes, because I can redirect Sucker Punch, or if it's trying to get rid of the Rillaboom, I can just redirect that. But if I see that you have a scenario where you can knock out the Ogerpon, like having Spiky Shield plus Follow Me, plus being able to do damage is just insane. So I don't blame them for going for a Parting Shot there into Ogerpon. I think Parting Shot into either of these Pokemon is a good idea, but yeah. So with the grassy terrain, I think it's probably a roll to kill Incineroar here, but again, Incineroar doesn't have Protect, so I'm comfortable going for it, because Chanpao still hasn't put any damage into the Rillaboom. I'm trying to think. It's really hard to say. Like, I think if you are going to target down the Ogerpon, you need to go for Ice Spinner. Ice Spinner is your strongest move, and in this scenario, it would get rid of the grassy terrain, which is pretty beneficial for me. The roll to kill there goes my way, but honestly, if it didn't, I'm fine, because Registeel comes in pretty safely here. So I think, okay, Meowstic is next. So the back Meowstic is interesting here, because it does set up an endgame where Raging Bolt can be on the field next to it with Reflect Up, which would be pretty annoying for my team, but it doesn't do too much for Chanpao here. So if I'm Aster, I'm really trying to basically, I know my Chanpao is going to go down, and I kind of want it to go down so I can get Raging Bolt out. So I want to get as much damage off as I can. I think the Sacred Sword there was a good idea, but like obviously it's like, oh god, it only did a third of my HP or something, or like 30 to 40%. But any amount of chip you can get on Registeel is really, like, okay, I shouldn't say that. You need to hit Registeel with like considerable chunks. Like it can't be, you can't chip it to death because you have leftovers plus grassy terrain. So you need to hit it multiple times with things that do like 30 to 40%, Because you're not one hit KOing it unless you're like a Chi with overheat or something, and even then I have Terra Water, so um, it's a tough Pokemon to deal with because you do need to hit it like 3 to 4 times to KO it, especially considering leftovers plus grassy terrain and maybe Lunar Blessing. But if you focus too hard on it, then it can protect. So I like the Sacred Swords here. The Sucker Punch is a little bit strange, I think. I don't get any damage off because I can't body press the Chien-Pao. And Reflect is up, so Heavy Slam is actually not doing that much. Chien-Pao is weirdly heavy, if I remember correctly, so yeah, it's a little bit weird. So here, I could get more damage off and then go, yeah, so like I said, the Meowstic isn't doing any damage right now, and after seeing how much Heavy Slam did, I'm kind of like, oh, it's not doing anything. So, I think that is, hopefully you watch this specific part, Aster, but the move choices on Chien-Pao could be a little bit better. Like, sometimes I notice you click moves with Chien-Pao that aren't like, they're not the ones that do the most damage, right? Like, if you wanted to do the most damage into Ogerpon, you do Ice Spinner. That probably picks up a KO, honestly, rather than Sacred Sword. Or you do Sacred Sword into the Registeel that does the most damage. So I'm not criticizing your targeting, because I think the targeting was actually correct. But it's more the move choice to make sure that you're doing the most damage. You pick up the KO anyway with the Alluring Voice, but I do get another Iron Defense up. And I did enough chip into the Chien-Pao that I think it's in range of Grassy Glide. So yeah, Rillaboom comes back in. And right now, like, I have 2 Mons that are very, very hard for your team to take down. Because Registeel is at +4 right now, and Rillaboom has a good defensive Terra plus Assault Vest plus Grassy Terrain, so yeah. It's honestly, in this scenario, I don't even, I'm not really sure what I would do either. Like, I do think you should probably get an Ice Spinner off to get rid of the terrain. I think that would be pretty beneficial, but Ice Spinner is hitting not very effective into either of these, so I kind of get it, but at this point, I think there's just not that much way that you have to break through the Registeel plus Rillaboom. Like, Raging Bolt in the back is really nice to have, especially with the Reflect up, but Raging Bolt is not going to be able to 2v1. Especially considering it basically goes even with both these Pokemon outside of Rillaboom having high horsepower, so it's got a losing matchup into Rillaboom since it's Terra Fire now, or because you don't have a Terra for it, and it's pretty much going even with Registeel, but Registeel's at +4 at this point, so yeah. And I don't want to sound really critical, but I feel like I should be giving more advice out in these rather than just analyzing my own play. So I'm trying to do a mix of both of it. And in this scenario, I think, unfortunately, this might just be a really bad matchup. Like, I don't know if your team actually has enough offensive pressure to get through the Registeel. Yeah, it feels to me like a bad matchup. Because you can taunt it with Zora, like I said, but you don't really get much else off in it. Like, once the taunt comes down, then what? You don't really get that much damage off. So I think the issue right here is that there's a couple Pokemon on your team that have disruption that's, like, meaningful between Meowstic having Trick Room and Reflect, and Zora having Snarl and Taunt. And I think those are very good moves to have. But you need to pair them with, like... Basically, once the disruption goes down, you need to be able to take advantage of it. And that's the harder part, I think, right now. Because I think Raging Bolt and Chien-Pao and Sylveon are all good Pokemon that function independently. Like, they're good without support and they're good with support. But it feels like sometimes they get stuck in a scenario where like, let's say that you're going up against a bad matchup and Sylveon is next to, like, Zora or Meowstic. Zora and Meowstic can disrupt, but they can't remove the bad matchup, right? Like, Meowstic is not going to be able to remove a Registeel or a Metagross or an Archaludon for Sylveon, so it's kind of... You either have to position to get rid of the threats, or, like, the Pokemon next to your supports need to be very threatening, basically. That's why I think it's really... I've been really liking having a fake out user and also a follow me user, because I feel like it buys my team so much space and lets me do whatever I want. So yeah, that's basically the feedback I have for you there. Is like, I think the Meowstic can still work. Like, I'm fine with you testing it and going forward with it. I think it has potential, but I think you need to be more willing to switch it out. And I think the Protect isn't really doing too much. Like, I'm fine with the Learn Voice to hit Urshifu, but the Protect is like, you don't really want Meowstic to stick on the field that long. You kind of want it to get its moves up and then leave the field, basically, right? So, yeah. I still think it was a bad matchup, so don't feel too bad about that one, I think. So the next one is me versus Anthony. This is a little tricky, I think, because his team actually does have very scary offensive threats between Regidraco, Chi-Yu, and Fluttermane. And the Metagross is kind of annoying for me to deal with. The good news is this is another matchup where I think Registeel is actually very good. There's a lot of Pokemon on the team that Registeel just doesn't really care about once it gets an Iron Defense up. So if I can get rid of the Chi-Yu in particular, I think that's the biggest threat. Metagross does have Stomping Tantrum, but especially once I have Iron Defense up, I literally just ignore the Stomping Tantrum. So, even though Metagross is hard for us to take down, I'm pretty confident, and as long as I buy some space for Registeel, I can win this one. So, I also think you'll see me bring the Pelipper Cresselia that I brought in Game 1, and the reason I'm doing this is because Pelipper having Wide Guard plus Focus Sash is really nice, because it basically forces a double target. Because you can double target to get past Wide Guard and take down Pelipper through the Focus Sash, but that means that Cresselia gets to do whatever it wants. And I have a scenario here where our Terra Fairy Cresselia can basically ignore Regidraco plus Chi-Yu. The threat that I was really scared of is a Chi-Yu plus Metagross, because Heavy Slam would cover for the Terra enough so that Chi-Yu could pick up a KO, and I don't have Protect on Cresselia. So, yeah, that was the lead that I was scared of. And if he led Whimsicott, which I think he does later, we'll see what happens in that scenario. But this is why I led Cresselia with Pelipper. Because the obvious play for me here is to Wide Guard. And I think he ends up over-predicting and thinking I wouldn't Wide Guard. So this is something that I think I did tell him after the game, which is like, it's fine to go for hard reads, but you need your backup plan to be available, right? Like, I think going for like dragon energy here is fine, and then I think you should, like with Chi Yu, probably do a dark pulse. That way, you like if one of your things gets blocked by wide guard, then whatever, you still get a dark pulse off into either of these mons, and avoid the worst case scenario, which is just that the read doesn't go your way and you get absolutely blasted by wide guard. So yeah, I have a pretty free Terra Fairy to cover for Dark Pulse into Trick Room. And then once Trick Room is up, I feel pretty confident about this. Yeah, I mean, that's the main reason that I went Pelipper for this lead, is because I was afraid of the Regidraco Chi Yu. It ends up paying off pretty well, so we're going to skip this because it takes forever to protect both. So yeah, I get Trick Room up, and I'm pretty sure his Pokemon are both timid. I'm not 100% sure, he might have changed it, but at this point I'm like, alright, I can just start firing away. What do I end up doing here? Because this Chi, let me check the team sheet. So this Chi does have Protect. So why did I go for Hurricane there? I guess predicting a switch, but I would have liked to just Weather Ball there. He does go for a Terra here, and I think he does a Protect here. I can't remember. So the Terra here, I think, is fine for me because I feel like I've negated most of Regidraco's most threatening presence, which is just immediately deleting things. Yeah, I have no idea why I went for a Hurricane there. I think I might have thought it was Focus Sash, because that only makes sense if it was Focus Sash. And yeah, unfortunately he did forget that Cresselia has Levitate. Overheat goes off. Does a good chunk of damage, especially considering we're in the rain, but it does mean that Chi Yu is effectively dead in the water now. So, yeah, honestly, I think I could probably switch Cresselia out at this point, but at the moment, I'm kind of like, there's no real threat on the field for me, so I may as well continue getting damage off with both of these, because it's actually pretty decent damage as well. The Protect fails there due to the confusion. I forgot that does mean the Beads of Ruin were powering up my Pokemon. And the Weather Ball actually did a lot of damage there. That's pretty insane. So yeah, Regidraco's now like basically crippled. It's got -2, low HP, so Dragon Energy doesn't do anything. And this turn. I think the crit definitely mattered in terms of KOing here. What ends up happening, as you'll see, is a Hurricane crit, and I think it does matter unless he's running really bulky Ogerpon, or really squishy Ogerpon, that is. Like, Hurricane probably doesn't KO bulky Ogerpon. Okay, so here I think my advice is like, you need to just let the Regidraco die, basically, because it's providing nothing on the field, right? It's -2 and it's low HP. Like, if I'm him there, I probably just click Dragon Energy and try to pick up the last HP KO, or Draco Meteor into the Pelipper, like Something like that. I guess that's something to note for both players is you kind of have to think like how useful is this Pokemon on my board right now? Like, is it actually useful if I'm having it stick around? It's fine if it lives a while, but like, is it actually doing anything, or am I just putting my partner in a position where it's like 1.5 V2 or something like that? So that's basically what I'm doing with my Pelipper right here. Is like, if it goes down, then whatever. But if I get moves off, then that's totally fine. So I think my thought process here is that if I can get Tailwind up, that would actually be really great for me. And if Pelipper goes down, that's totally fine with me too. And I can pick up Icy Wind isn't going to lower the speed enough for Flutter Mane since it's a speed booster, so I may as well just pick off the Registeel. And he goes for Protect here, trying to stall out the last turn of Trick Room. So I think that's a good play, honestly. But it does mean I get a free Tailwind up here. So yeah, at this point I think there's not really much you can do. I still have Pokemon in the back. But yeah, I mean that just kind of shows you like once the speed control's in your favor, things can really go downhill or uphill, right? Like Cresselia and Pelipper are not like really strong offensive Pokemon, but speed control plus good like coverage decisions, I think. I don't know if there's a term for it, but basically going for those value moves where if they work, then great, and if they don't work, you're still in a fine spot. So here, normally, I mean, I usually am like, I would just lead the same thing and see what the response is. But I think the type of player that Anthony is, he usually is pretty quick to adapt, I think. Yeah, this feels more like a player matchup thing, because I think if I was in an actual tournament, I would just bring Pelipper Cresselia again, just to cover for the Trio Regidraco, but Rillaboom Cresselia is still a fine lead. I think in my notes I actually wrote as an alternative lead to be Rillaboom plus Registeel, but I didn't feel super confident there, so so yeah, this is a scarier lead for me to deal with here. The Heavy Slam is an option here. So I can't really tear Cresselia, but in this scenario I don't really need to. So my thought process here is that I'm always going to click Trick Room, because if Whimsicott clicks Trick Room to reverse it on me, then it's fine. Like, I get a fake out into Metagross and we're back to neutral. And Whimsicott's not doing anything to me. Cresselia's not actively doing anything to either of these Pokemon anyway, so it's fine. So yeah, fake out the damage dealer, and then he goes for Moonblast actually. So I do get the Trick Room up here. Now the issue here is that he can reverse it on me, and I can't double target the Whimsicott and KO it because both of my Pokemon are not very good at that. So instead, I could break. This is Focus Sash. So yeah, I Moonblast into the Whimsicott to break the Focus Sash, and then just start clicking high horsepower. So solid damage. That Heavy Slam did a lot. I'm basically trying to remove this Metagross as fast as possible, and he does do a nice double target down to get rid of Rillaboom there, so if he had something like Ogerpon Wellspring in the back and that was his game plan to carry with, then that move makes total sense. You want to get rid of the Rillaboom, right? For me, I'm trying to get rid of this Metagross because it's the most threatening Pokemon to most of my team that isn't Registeel. So here I have a pretty free Iron Defense, I think. I'm fine with. Actually, you know what? This actually is not an amazing move. Unless I protect next turn with Registeel, because the problem here is that if I get Encored next turn and I'm stuck using Iron Defense, then that would have been, I think, the play to go for. Yeah, I think if I don't protect plus Lunar Blessing next turn, then I am an idiot. Let's find out. How smart is he? He's an idiot. Please protect. Oh no. Okay, yeah, so that is 100% the correct move there. Is you encore the Registeel, and that effectively stops it from putting any pressure onto the field. You know what? I kind of get the target down here because you want to get Cresselia out before it can Trick Room again. And, you know, it's probably rolls to kill here, so I probably got lucky there. But I honestly think just encoring the Registeel would have been better, because Cresselia on its own is not going to do anything to you. It's getting a couple Moonblasts off, sure, but just being able to... oh, this is the other turn. So yeah, there's actually two mistakes here that could have been capitalized on. Encore under the Registeel to force it to Iron Defense forever. And then right here, I needed to Terra Water, because if he Terra Fired this turn, then I was dead. My thought process was that I could just Body Press GU and kill it immediately before it moved, and I didn't have to commit a Terra because it would just be a one-hit KO. But I totally forgot that he could just Terra Fire, and then it probably doesn't one-hit KO, and then my Registeel dies to overheat. So, bad move by me. I think he ends up Terra Ghosting the Whimsicott here, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I think Whimsicott has already kind of done its... Well, it hasn't encored, but it's a little late for that. I'm not the hugest fan of terroring a support Pokemon unless it's to get off a very key move that I need. Which in this case, I think he goes... Does he Trick Room here? I can't remember. Yeah, he does. Okay. Yeah, because that's only stopping Body Press, which I wouldn't press into Whimsicott anyway. I would use Heavy Slam, so it's not the best usage of Terra here. Whimsicott still gets the Trick Room off, so it's fine, but right there was a KO on the Registeel, and now that I realized it, I actually realized it last turn right after I confirmed my moves. I was like, wait a minute, this could have gone really badly. But now that I see the threat, I'm like, alright, I have to Terra Water the Registeel here. Okay, so he gets the speed control completely in his favor. I'm not really sure. It depends on what his back Pokemon is, but I don't even know if he needed to Tailwind there. Like, I guess Moonblast isn't doing that much, but like, I think your Pokemon are already naturally faster. I guess you don't know what's in the back, so that's fine. So yeah, now we got Landers versus Fluttermane coming in. So I think right here what I do is I double protect to get some leftovers recovery, I think. Or am I just... Okay, never mind. Okay, so... Yeah, I think if Fluttermane protects, then whatever, I still get a KO onto the Whimsicott, and if it doesn't protect, then Registeel one-hit KOs it, and... Well, actually, you know what, that's not... It's a little bit risky here for me, I think, honestly, because Heavy Slime is not a guaranteed one-hit KO on Fluttermane, actually. Specifically because I don't have those attack EVs that I mentioned. It's not guaranteed on bulky flutters, which speed booster flutters tend to be pretty bulky. They tend to go like almost no special attack investment and go pretty heavy into bulk plus speed. So there was some danger there. I don't think Speed Booster Flutter can KO both of my Pokemon without like a triple crit here, but it wasn't as guaranteed as I thought, I think. So yeah, this is where I said double protect to get the leftovers recovery in. And I'm fine doing this because even though he protected last turn, so he has no protection. Or no, he didn't protect, did he? No, he did. So even though he protected last turn and I have a free attack into him, basically, I'm fine if like I protect for the leftovers recovery, and if he decides to protect again, then I'm just getting more leftovers recovery. So no matter what, it's stalling is in my favor here. Because it puts me... The more health I heal, the less chance there is for me to die to like a Shadow Ball crit or something. But I mean, realistically, like he would have had to crit KO the Landers here and then survive the Heavy Slam, which, depending on how bulky the Fluttermane is, like I said, it could survive. Also, Landers doing that much damage with his power is crazy. Like, I know sheer force 252 life orb, but like, damn, Fluttermane has so much special defense. So yeah, that's it for my matches. But because there were only 3 of us, I actually got to watch the full set of Anthony versus Aster, so that's really nice. So I can go over it. Because normally I don't like doing VOD review on matches that are halfway finished or something like that, because I don't have context. But here I can kind of go from the beginning. So let's see. For Anthony, I think Metagross is really nice here. Yeah, Metagross is great here. So I'm probably thinking like a Metagross plus Ogerpon angle would be decent. I'm not too worried about getting speed control against that team because 1, they have a Trick Room user, and 2, Metagross doesn't care about speed control because it has Bullet Punch or it can just tank things. So I think Ogerpon would be good next to Metagross so that you can direct damage away from it and let Metagross either tank or go for bullet punches. It doesn't have Body Press, I think. I think it has Psychic Fangs and something else. Stomping Tantrum, yeah. Yeah, Stomping Tantrum is pretty good. What else is there? Chiyu Reggie Draco also isn't too bad. Yeah, you'd have to double protect against fake out, and then against Chen Pao you'd have to burn a defensive Terra, but wouldn't be too bad. I guess the danger here is that the Chiyu doesn't have Terra Ghost, so a Sacred Sword could just knock it out. Yeah, I think the safest thing in my head is either Metagross plus Ogre Pawn, or like Fluttermane plus Raging Draco is probably not too bad. Because you can hit Icy Wind, break the Sash, lower speed, and then get another Icy Wind off, and then Dragon Energy just KOs everything, I think. If I'm Aster... Let's see. This is kind of rough. I think I'm always going Meowstic here. And I'm trying to do Terra Fairy plus Trick Room, I think. I think Meowstic plus Chien-Pao would be good. You can Terra Fairy and get Trick Room up in front of pretty much everything. I guess Meowstic plus Chien-Pao or Meowstic plus Incineroar. Because Incineroar lets you fake out a Pokemon and ensure that Meowstic never dies immediately, basically. And once you get Trick Room up, things get a lot easier for you. The Metagross is really the problem. I don't really know how you get rid of them. Like, honestly, your best answer to Metagross feels like Incineroar. Like, Flare Blitz is probably doing the most because of the Assault Vest. You don't have a special attack that's super effective against it, other than like Snarl. So yeah, I mean, it's either Sucker Punch or Flare Blitz doing the most damage to it. So I guess the plan is, I would say Meowstic plus Incineroar and then Chien-Pao Raging Bolt. So the plan is you either get damage off with Flare Blitz or Sucker Punch into Metagross, or you force it to Terra and let Raging Bolt kill it because it's a water type now. So yeah, Chien-Pao plus Sylveon. Sylveon has a really, really bad matchup into Metagross, I think. Like, the Hyper Voice isn't doing anything which you need for the social attack boost. And even if you Terra Water to resist the Steel moves, you're not really going to get that much damage into it because of the Assault Vest. So Sylveon's a tough bring here. I think you really need the speed control to go in your favor here. This is kind of why I wanted to see Chien-Pao plus Meowstic, is because the Meowstic clicking Trick Room either forces a double into it, or it lets Chien-Pao put immediate pressure on the Whimsicott and KO it. But it does end up being Zora. The Snarl is not really that impactful, I think. You know, I don't mind having Zora out here, actually, but I would have liked to see Bitter Malice into Metagross. I actually like the... Okay, I was going to say I like the Encore onto the Zora, because what that would do is force it to keep snarling, which isn't doing anything at all to Metagross, so that way you get rid of the chance of the Bitter Malice coming out. And yeah, right there, like... Unfortunately, you do have to either detect or burn a Terra, because Metagross will absolutely one-shot Sylveon. And right there, like, yeah, Bitter Malice doing a sizable chunk to the most threatening Pokemon on his team, so... and, you know, Metagross doesn't have a way to heal itself, so any damage you get down on this thing is important. So Incineroar comes in. Yeah, he doesn't want to switch here, really. Okay, he does. That's probably fine. Yeah. Chiyu switch here makes sense because it actually doesn't care about getting hit by anything here. This covers for the fake out, so I think this is a pretty good switch. And on Aster's end, I think they end up going for knockout or knockoff, which is actually really good. I like the targeting here a lot. Metagross can't protect itself, so you have a free double into that slot. Bitter Malice covers for Metagross staying in, and knockoff covers for switch out knocking off either the Dragon Plate or the Life Orb. Lowers the damage output, so good play there. See, this is the thing, like, I feel like Aster has the correct play sometimes, and even in scenarios where I feel like I don't really see the same play that she does, it ends up working out. But I think the speed control kind of matters. Like, I think against Anthony particularly, it matters a lot against his team because his team is so offensive that you can't really like slow play it. So you have to like force the control into your favor, or force him to bring Whimsicott and take advantage of the fact that Whimsicott can't like threaten you really hard with stuff. But I also think that's kind of a biased opinion because I think that feels kind of like very much my mindset on how I would approach it. And there's probably a lot more different options that you have. So the Terra Water here lets him survive a Sucker Punch, I think. Yeah. Okay. Bull Punch doing good damage. Heat Wave picks up the KO. Yeah, you know, I would have liked to see Sacred Sword into you. Yeah. That's hard to say, honestly. Like, I think Sacred Sword to Chiyu in hindsight would have been better, but if he protects with Chiyu, then both Chien-Pao and Chiyu aren't doing anything, and then Metagross and Incineroar get their turn. That's probably fine, because Chiyu not getting an attack off means that Metagross can only get a bullet punch off. And then next turn you're still able to hit with Sucker Punch. So yeah, I would have liked to see the Sacred Sword into the Chiyu. I think that would have been good. That's like a general advice thing that I think I mentioned earlier, but like, you don't have to always hard protect and target away from it. Like, sometimes it's better to just cover for them not protecting, and if your move gets protected, then you still be in a good position to what am I trying to say here? Like, if you attack into a protect, it can be good for your positioning still, because it can lock down the slot. So yeah, let's see. So Sylveon and Incineroar, yeah, I think that Sylveon is not really the bring here. Like, there's just too much. There's too many Pokemon it doesn't want to go up against. Like, it doesn't really want to go up against Terrifier GU. It doesn't really want to go up against Metagross. It especially doesn't want to go up against Metagross. And it doesn't really want to go up against Terra Steel Ready Draco, so... and you have to remember, Sylveon's very slow and not very physically bulky. Okay, Terra Water here makes sense. You get away from the Flare Blitz angle. And Terra Water here makes a lot of sense. I like this Terra Water a lot. So they ended up going for Fake Out, which I think, honestly, Anthony did a fine play. He's covering for Flare Blitz angle. And pretty good turn for Aster. Hyper Voice doing more damage than the Dazzling Gleam, so... The problem here is, yeah, like, you really need to protect... Does this Sylveon have Protect? One sec. Yeah, if... This is definitely a Detect angle. Because, your Sylveon's gonna take so much damage or straight up die to the Metagross Psychic Fang, so I think protecting it here and then going for like a parting shot into Flutter May would have been pretty good. The raw Tianpao switch is kind of scary. Please excuse the fireworks outside. It's day whatever of Chinese New Year. I think day 8, so... Yeah, that's a pretty rough turn, but... Like I said, I think if you get Detect off, you're in a much better scenario, because at that point you either focus... You force them to focus down either slot and you get a free attack off, so... yeah, I mean, there's a very obvious Fake Out coming into the Metagross. I think you just... that's kind of hard. I think if you're Aster, at this point you do need to start making hard reads. Like I just said, you don't have to hard read Protects, but I think because you're starting to fall behind, you kind of have to call some turns here. You have a pretty free double target here. Yeah, that's really nice. I like that. Except I would have liked to... yeah, Sacred Sword's fine, I think. I can't remember if Sucker Punch works if the opponent flinches. Like, if it still counts as the attacking move. But this is a good sequence right here. Predicting the Protect, doubling into the Metagross who can't protect itself, and then getting the KO onto it. So that removes one of the biggest obstacles to your team. Dazzling Gleam, obviously doing a lot to Tianpao. Parting shot. I think a Flare Blitz would have been the angle here. Flare Blitz or... yeah, Flare Blitz. Because knockoff wouldn't have done extra damage. So, because I'm pretty sure Flare Blitz probably KOs from there. And this is kind of a set where I would have really liked to see the support Pokemon getting the Terra from Aster. Because right now, there's nothing really stopping Anthony from just double targeting into the Meowstic. But at the beginning of the game, I think... Well, okay, not against Metagross, but... I guess what I'm trying to say is I would have liked to see Joustic run its Trick Room here. Protect. Huh. This ends up working out quite well for Aster, but I do think you go for Trick Room here over Reflect. Because you get Trick Room up, and then you can Reflect anyway, because you're naturally slower than these. So, and you have Prankster. So, this is a really rough spot, because the Follow Me is just devastating, honestly. You can't Sucker Punch the Fluttermane, you have to just go for Ice Spinner. Which I do think, I don't know if Aster knows this or not, but the Ice move into Ogerpon is neutral here, so it's just the strongest move you have. Without getting in fear of this happening, which is that if you Sucker Punch the Ogerpon, it just fails to Follow Me. So, yeah, I don't know if there's enough pressure here, right? Yeah, yeah, I would have really liked to see Trick Room. It's definitely tough because I know in the first game Trick Room like really didn't help your team at all, but I think against Anthony's team it's like really necessary. So yeah, right here he has a pretty free target down, I think. Fake out. Dazzling Gleam's interesting there. I would have liked to see the Shadow Ball. Because now you proc the Citrus Berry. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day, so. Trick Room comes up. This actually depends on how tanky your Ogerpon is. Because I think Flare Blitz probably KOs here if you're not very bulky. I think you Flare Blitz into Ogerpon there. The Fluttermane actually isn't doing that much damage because it's at -1, and Dazzling Gleam on Speed Booster Flutter isn't going to nuke your whole team. And Ogerpon's the one that's threatening the KO onto Incineroar. So yeah, I mean at this point it's unfortunately pretty Jover. So, yeah, I think against Anthony's team, like I said, like Trick Room is the key for sure. Like you absolutely need the speed control in your favor for that. And like he has an answer to it in Whimsicott, but you can still play around it. The thing with facing teams like his, which is like Tailwind Hyper offense, is that you really just need to be able to. You're not going to be able to weather the storm. It's just not going to happen. So like, you got to swing the speed control in your favor, or you need to be able to pick up KOs onto important things, like use Incineroar Fake Out to lock down one slot while you try and get rid of the other, or like double into things to get KOs. It's pretty tricky, honestly. Because I think Aster's team is more built around like debuffing via Zora, Incineroar. Meowstic has Reflect and Trick Room, but like those are like pseudo debuffs, so to speak. But against a team like that, like you can't really debuff them enough. There's just too much raw damage between Regidraco, GU, and then Metagross is just a bad matchup. So yeah, I think that's it. That was a pretty long one, even though there were less matches. So I hope you guys do end up going back and watching those, because I think there were some pretty key takeaways. I'm thinking next week we might either do a tournament or like enter an actual tournament, not one of these round robins, or I might switch it up and do like a more fun format. So maybe like team swapping or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that's it for now. See you guys.